What a lad, and you won't be surprised that, again, I have another absolute lad for you for this one. Today's guest is one of the best referees in the game, a man who has been in charge of controlling some of the biggest international games there are, and he is just genuinely a really good lad who's open to sharing what life is really like as a pro ref. This is one that I've been really looking forward to. It is with the legend himself, Paul Williams. Welcome, mate.
Oh, awesome, mate. Jimmy, thanks for being here, mate. It's a pleasure.
Mate, awesome to have you on. A lot of people probably won't know, but you're a part of, I guess, the Crusaders at the moment. All the refs have been given a franchise, so I've managed to rope you into a podcast while you've been here.
Yeah, I thought you probably would line me up at some stage. I've been trying to avoid you like the plague, but unfortunately you've got me. You've nailed me down. Here I am.
Well, you're here and ready to share.
That's the one.
And have a beer, by the way. How good. 10:30 in the morning having a wee Summit Ultra.
Hey, well, it is Easter and we should be celebrating. So cheers. Thanks,
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it. But let's start with it. 2023, refereeing, Super Rugby, some new rules. I guess the game's changed. I feel like refereeing's at some of the best level it's been for a while. I feel like the refs have stayed well out of the news this season.
Yeah, well, long may that last, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good at the moment. I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. You know, obviously the innovations of the game has meant that there's far less TMO involvement, so that's obviously a good thing. Which has then put a lot of responsibility back on the shoulders of the team of three that's on the ground, which is actually really nice. And I think too, like, the fact that coaches and players know that the TMO will only be coming in for those really big moments, those really big mistakes that we make, probably gives everyone a lot of confidence that we're going to see a lot more ball and play, which we clearly have. I mean, the stats have shown a high percentage of ball and play. You know, I was looking at my running figures the other day, and I did the Hurricanes Force game and did 10.2k in that game.
True. What would you usually do? How does that compare?
Yeah, well, look, in previous years gone by, I mean, it kind of depends on what game you're refereeing, what competition. Super Rugby is naturally pretty fast, so on average, I'll probably be doing somewhere around, you know, 8 to 9k, and that's quite high typically. But now we're seeing it well over the 9s and up into the 10s. So, you know, that's it's great for the game. It's great for those sitting at home on the couch. But I tell you what, she's pretty hard work on my little legs, mate. Yeah, a little bit more time in the gym, but a little bit more speed and fitness work, I think.
Yeah, so how does that affect? Does that affect your decision making? Obviously, when you come under fatigue, or not really? Is that why it's so important to be fit?
Well, naturally it does. You know, we don't have the privilege, or we don't have the luxury, I should say, of you know, subbing someone else in with 20 to go. You know. So we've obviously got to make sure we're cardiovascularly fit, but also ready for those fast, high-intensity movements as well. So, I mean, I think a lot of people would be surprised about the amount of work we actually have to do physically, because, you know, you think Super Rugby gets to a point where, you know, it can't get much faster, but yet again we find ways to make it quicker. So. Which is great as a spectacle, but it just means we have to work that little bit harder away from the game.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that. So is the last sort of 20 minutes, 10 minutes of the game the hardest for you to referee?
I wouldn't say it's the hardest. I mean, you could have a kick-off and have a really high-impact decision in the first sort of collision of the game. But it's all kind of relative, you know. You put it in context, score, weather, the occasion, the crowd, all that stuff sort of contributes to that pressure. So, yeah, I know that if you can totally manage your physical pillar, as well as that mental pillar, which we know now is critical, it puts you in a really good place to be able to make those big decisions right at the end of the game. And we love that too, you know, like it's the same as a player, you know, when they've got to make that clutch kick from the sideline. We love that pressure. We love being in the moment. So, I think it'd be similar to a play, you know. We love those tight games because those are the ones where you really have to work.
Yeah, true. So those games where it's like drawn, full time, 80 minutes is up, you love that moment. I always felt like as a referee you'd be trying to avoid those moments and avoid those big calls, because at the end of the day it's probably going to come down, or you're going to be in the news again around your call, whether it was right or wrong, because there's so many grey areas in the game still, which, you know, you could look at someone entering a breakdown and you could call probably 3 or 4 penalties on just one breakdown. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think I can probably speak on behalf of most referees and say we love those big moments. We love those close games, and
and getting drawn in. And it's funny you say that because I remember vividly the game New Zealand Australia. It was during COVID times, and we weren't able to have mutual referees.
First ever ref to referee the All
Well,
Blacks,
I'll correct you there. I was the second one,
Were
but
ya?
yeah, it had been 50 years since the first one.
Oh,
So
true.
it was a pretty like the whole occasion was a bizarre sort of experience. So, you know, travelling to the ground normally would be somewhere else. You know, would be refereeing test matches elsewhere when there's a test match on at home. Would be watching it in the early hours of the morning. So anyway, driving to the ground, it was at Westpac Trust Stadium, Sky Stadium now, apologies. Driving to the stadium, and you know you've got All Black supporters walking along the street, and I'm looking out the window going, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
You know, this is odd, this is weird. And then once we got to the stadium, and you just go about your normal process, you warm up and all the rest of it, so that was fine. But then one thing I hadn't really factored in was how I would be feeling when I stood in front of the grandstand listening to the national anthem.
Yeah.
So naturally the Australians did theirs first, and that was fine because I've heard that plenty of times standing in the middle. But then when the the New Zealand national anthem started, I really choked up.
True.
Really choked up, and I was fighting back the tears. And I had no idea that the emotion was going to hit me like it did. And anyway, like I didn't even remember the haka, so I'm still processing, trying to get myself under control before kickoff, you know. So don't remember the haka at all. But as soon as I blew the whistle, I was like, right, I'm into this now. You know, that was like the trigger. I've parked that. I've dealt with it. I took a few deep breaths, obviously, beforehand, but then I was into the game. And, you know, I'm a pretty simple guy. Like, I can't factor in, you know, favouritism of the All Blacks or anything like that, bias. I'm just not that smart, you know. Like, I'm running around going, here's a decision, here's a play on, you know. You're in the moment. But I vividly remember the end of that game, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers do as well, that it was a draw. I mean, the game ended up being a draw, but the last play of the game, Reece Hodge had a penalty shot at goal.
That's right. The moments you love, you awarded that one.
Wow. You know, again, I was in the moment. I just saw a decision that had to be made, and I blew the penalty.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after I blew the penalty, and I looked to Michael Hooper to see what he wanted to do, and he pointed to the post for a shot. And then it dawned on me, I was like, holy hell, I could be refereeing the All Blacks to a loss here. I'm going to have to move home. I'm going to have to leave the country. So as he's lining up the shot, like all of these sort of childhood memories are flooding back, And I knew, like, the way Reece Hodge kicks a ball, like, that's either going to go through the post or it's going to go like down Cuba Street, man, because distance was not going to be a problem for him. And generally I'd stand about the middle of the field and follow the ball in, but I was like, if this is going over, I need to see this. So I got very close to actually track the ball going towards the post. And you know a kicker, as he kicks it, you know when he's hit it sweetly, right? And this thing is just absolutely humming towards the post. And then I don't know what it was, but it must have been the hand of God or something. But at the very last second, it broke right, smacked into the post, and now the game's back on again. And I'm like, so in that moment, and it was probably a really good learning opportunity for me too. Like in that moment, like my mind was going back to like me as a young boy doing the haka butt naked in my room in front of the mirror, you know, and giving it the big ones, and you know, the early mornings where you're watching the All Blacks and all this sort of stuff is coming back. So in that moment, my mind was elsewhere, and then when the ball hit the post, I was like, wow, I've got to get back into this game here. And you know, on reflection, I wasn't able to pick up on it sort of the days or even the weeks after that, because it was all still quite raw. But afterwards, I was like, you know, it probably took me a good 20 to 30 seconds to pull myself back from all that external thinking and get back focused into, you know, here's a pass, here's a tackle, has he rolled away, all that sort of stuff. And I'll freely admit, like, there were decisions there, like, both ways, against the All Blacks, for the All Blacks, for Australia, against Australia, that I just wasn't in the zone, you know. And the game ended up going for an extra 8 minutes.
That's right.
And I was just like, God, you know, and the crowd was on their feet for those 8 minutes. It was raining, and it was, you know, it was one of those moments that we spoke about before that, you know, you love that as a referee. And, you know, those are the games you remember, the ones where it's a blowout and, it's you don't get drawn into it that much. You don't remember those games, but man, I've got some very, very vivid memories of that game.
It's cool. It sounds like an absolute emotional roller coaster.
It was. It took me a couple of weeks to sort of get myself under control after that one, but it was a pleasure to be able to say that I've refereed the All Blacks, because I mean, when I started out in this career, it was never possible. But I tell you what, I hope it never happens again. I'm quite happy to stay well away from the All Blacks. Like I said before, I don't think I'm intelligent enough to have any bias one way or the other. But yeah, I just think all the external noise and the possible perception that might be out there, I think it's best if countrymen stay away from refereeing their own country. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the World Cup this year, it's even going a step further, hasn't it? In terms of you can't referee someone in the same pool.
Yeah, I believe that's right. Yeah, which makes sense, right? Yeah.
Because of that external factor, you might want to try and get them through.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, again, it's all perception based, right?
Yeah.
Like we're professionals in what we do. We make decisions based on the pictures that present themselves. To be able to, it's hard enough to do that. Like you said before, you go to a breakdown, there could be 5 or 6 decisions, but you've got to choose the best one.
Yeah.
Like to layer over the top of that, who's from what country or players or all the rest of it, we're just not good enough to do that, So, yeah.
It's such a hard game to referee, though, isn't it? It is like...
It is. There's no doubt we've got a very complex game, and we're only trying to find ways like changing the laws to make it a more entertaining spectacle, which I'm hugely in favour for, but it takes quite a bit of mental elasticity each season to actually get your head around these different sorts of law variations and whatnot. And even within a season, within a year, it can be different in different competitions. So, it's not easy for us. I mean, it's not easy for the punter sitting at home either. So, but I think we're certainly on the right path in terms of creating a product that everyone can understand anyway. Little way to go yet.
Yeah, so I'm interested into how you sort of got into refereeing as well. Like obviously a young Taranaki lad, grew up on the coast there of the beautiful North Island. I'm very, very privileged and blessed for my upbringing. So I grew up in a little place called Patea. It's actually Whenukura, a little rural community in between Patea and Waverley. Same as Elijah Taylor.
That's the one, mate. Yeah, they breed some good stock down there.
They all come out of there.
That's the one. That was, I came from pretty humble upbringings, on the farm. Entertainment on the weekend was obviously rugby, but then after rugby it'd be hot pie and a Coke at the bottom dairy, then home to do some eeling or motorbike riding or whatever it was, or it might be time to go and get the cows in. So, it was a pretty simple upbringing, but I probably followed the natural pathway in terms of most young guys at that stage, and off to school, boarding school up at Francis Douglas. Loved my years up there. I really grew as a young lad there, I think.
A lot of good players come out of there too, don't
they? I've heard there's one or two, Smith and Barrett, a couple of names that ring a bell, plus a few others. So, unfortunately I wasn't on the All Black list, but I tried to find another avenue, so... I guess for refereeing, it was 2011. I was over in the UK at the time. Obviously, 2011 was when we had the World Cup, and I really wanted to be involved in that in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, I wasn't going to be involved as a player. So I thought, hey, how about being a volunteer? So I applied for a job as a player, as a team liaison, and I thought, what better way to sort of be involved in the World Cup than to be with a team and cruise around New Zealand. Anyway, the guy who was interviewing me was a guy called Ray Hopkins, and he was the president of the local referees association. I knew him very well. He knew that I played club rugby back in Taranaki, and he said to me at the end of the interview, Paul, have you ever thought about giving refereeing a go? And in my head I was like, hell no, I've never thought about that, because I was that lippy little halfback that used to give referees heaps on the field. But then I thought, if I say no, it's probably not going to do my chances any good at getting this job. So I said to him, actually, you know what? Yeah, I might give it a go one day. That's a really good thought. And I really shot myself in the foot, because 2 weeks later I was refereeing an under-12s game down in Hara before playing Prem footy in the afternoon. So that was 2011. Fast forward to 2015, and New Zealand Rugby offered me a full-time contract.
All right, that's quick, eh?
Yeah, it was pretty quick. I was probably pretty fortunate too, because it was the same year. Actually, I think the start of 2016 was when the Super Rugby competition expanded to Super 18, which was great, but we had a shortage of referees, so we had to pull a few in. So I was one of the lucky ones. It was myself, Brendan Pickerel, and what a lad, Jamie Nutbrown.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the three of us got a crack at joining the Super Rugby panel, and we were into it. But, gee, I remember getting that contract going, bloody hell, these guys are going to pay me to run around and blow a whistle. Are they right in the head?
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, it's been a hell of a journey, mate, eh? And, you know, the skills and, you know, like, I guess personal skills that I've picked up through being involved in such a high-pressure job have been so transferable in other areas of my life, you know. And I think, you know, we were talking the other day about the level of resilience that it builds up within you as a person, you know, week in, week out. You're constantly in the spotlight. So to be able to manage 30 guys in a high-pressure environment, you've got to be really in check with yourself, you know. You need to be able to manage yourself. And if you can't do that, then good luck, you know. You'll be battling. But, you know, now it's sort of got to a place where managing 30 big burly blokes on the field is easy. Going home and managing 3 kids, bloody hell, now that's tough work, eh? But, yeah, that's kind of how the journey started, mate, and how I got into it and sort of where I am now.
Yeah, so did you love it from the start, like that first game, under 12s, whatever it was? Did you love it? Did you love the feeling of having the whistle, the control? Or?
Oh, yeah, probably. I think more so it really lined up with one of my values, which is around contribution. And, you know, I'd got to I won't say the end of my playing career, because, you know, I was only about 27, loving my footy, fortunate enough not to be injured or anything like that. I was playing for Southern at the time, great bunch of lads. And then this opportunity came up, and, you know, I was really reluctant about taking that jump into it wasn't professional then, but taking that jump into refereeing and letting go of my rugby. You know, it was actually my wife Vicky who said to me, "Lol, what have you got to lose? Like, give it a crack, give it 2 or 3 years and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go in the direction that you want it to, or you're not enjoying it, then you can always go back and play footy." But I vividly remember that first game, that under 12s game, coming off the field, and like these young kids coming up and just saying, "Oh, thanks so much, we had such a good time," and even parents on the sideline saying, "Thanks very much." Like, that gave me a real sense of contribution, like I've made a difference here. It's a little bit different at the professional level, because now it's a job, you know. You run out there and you just do your job. So that's why I actually really love going back and, you know, refereeing community footy, club footy, getting back to the true grassroots. You know, going back into the club rooms afterwards and having a big bot and talking to a few of the lads. So I think that's real humbling too. Like, it puts things in perspective. But yeah, it is different now. It is challenging. Like, this is a job, you know. But in saying that, mate, like, what an absolute privilege, you know. We get to be involved for a job in the game that we absolutely love, and we know our time in the space is limited. So yeah, it's make the most of it while we can, eh? Make hay while the sun shines, as they say.
That's it. So where'd you get to as a footy player? You mentioned yourself being a nippy halfback. What sort of level did you get to? What held you back from being a pro?
What held me back? Are you referring to my size here?
Not at all, mate.
Well, size was probably one
You're the
thing.
size of D-Mac.
I'd say, yeah, this is true. I'd say, well, and that's, size is certainly one thing, but I think I was probably lacking in the skill level as well, mate, just to be fair. But nah, like, I just had the normal, you know, New Zealand young fella upbringing, played at 4 or 5 and had a footy ball in my hand the whole way through. Went away to university, obviously, Francis Douglas, played first 15 there, which I absolutely bloody loved. Down to varsity, played down there. I was at Palmerston North, Massey University.
Oh, yeah.
Hell of a spot down there. Was back in Palmy just the other day and sort of walked past the Fitz. There were a few good times at the Fitz bar there. But, you know, from there I went overseas and I picked up a sort of an amateur sort of contract playing for a club in York, or playing for initially for a club in Huddersfield, which is big league country. That's up in the north of England. And myself and a couple of other lads that I was at uni with, we went over there, and we were just going for the experience, mate. We just wanted to do a bit of travelling, see the other side of the world, and rugby's this amazing tool that we've got that allows us to have those opportunities.
Yeah.
So anyway, ended up finishing up with Huddersfield, and we moved to another club in York, which was actually York. The rugby club was York, and my intentions were only ever supposed to be to go over there, maybe for a season or two, have a bit of an experience, come home, and then actually get into the real world. But I was having such a bloody good time over there, and the club that I was with, it was an awesome bunch of lads. We were really well supported. They gave us a house, they gave us a car to get around in, flicked us a few match payments, which were really just beer tokens for the weekend, mate. But we were just living our best life, eh? It was so good. And I actually, during the summertime, because obviously I needed a little bit of work for a little bit more pocket money, I was working at the rugby club on the cricket pitches. So it was a rugby and cricket club. And they played in one level below county cricket. So it was a fairly handy standard. So, mate, I was out on the roller. I was doing...
Groundsman.
I was just living my best life, eh? Shorts and singlet on, had the headphones on. You manage your own time. It was bloody brilliant, eh? So, naturally, I was pretty reluctant about coming home and getting into the real world. But, so I had 3 of the best years of my life over there. But I ended up actually, funny story this, I popped home for, I think it was a 21st or an engagement or whatever it was, and I'd used my 2-year UK working visa, so I knew that was gone. So I applied for a 1-year Irish visa. I'm not even too sure if these visas still exist now, but I wanted to extend my stay, so I did the 1-year Irish one. And while I was on my 1-year Irish visa, I came back home for this family function. When I flew back with my little sister because she was just starting her OE for the first time, and we came through customs, and everything was going pretty well. Lined up. You get to the scanning bit, and I remember the guy's face when he looked at my passport, and I knew straight away, oh, this isn't good. This is not good. And he said, "Excuse me, sir, can you just move to the side?" So I moved to the side, and 10, 15 minutes later, I get taken into this room and interrogated and all the rest of it. Interrogated's probably not the right word. It was more just a discussion. But anyway, they had reason to believe that I was overstaying. They were asking questions, what are you doing back here? Who's your employer and all the rest of it? And I was just getting cashies from my rugby club, so it wasn't really legit. So he had a fair argument. And I remember my sister was sitting next to me because she had to go through the process as well, but she was fine in the end. And this guy said to me, "Hey, look, we're not too sure which way this is going to go. Either you'll be accepted and you'll go through, or there's a good chance that you'll be on the next flight home. So you and your sister sort of need to make a decision. Like, if she stays with you now, there's a chance she goes home as well." And as I turned to her to sort of like start the discussion about, gee, what are we going to do here? She was already halfway out the door, mate. She was gone, just giving me a thumbs up from about 5 metres away. Good luck, bro. So she was off on her OE. I was staying there in the interrogation room, sort of sweating bricks. And as it turned out, they took me to a detention centre, which was sort of just off-site at Heathrow Airport. Put me in a paddy wagon, took me there and all the rest of it. Went through check-in.
True.
Yeah. Got pretty gnarly pretty quickly. And at this detention centre, they take everything off your phone, the works. So now I can't contact anyone. And even the people that sort of check me in were kind of looking at me like with that look of, what are you doing here? You know, like people in detention centres do not look like little white boys from Patea, they're usually sort of looking a little bit rough around the edges. And anyway, we ended up, this guy takes me to my cell. It's a dead set cell. And I'm with another guy from, he must be from, I don't know, Eastern European guy or something like that. He was a big sort of dark looking guy and very intimidating, very intimidating. And the cell door opens and the two of us are standing there side by side, and it's a bunk bed set up. And I don't know what possessed me to do it, but, and you know, like when you go on school trips and stuff and you like want to get on the top bunk, so you just go shotgun. So I just looked at him and go shotgun. And as I did it, I was like, what are you doing, man? So anyway, I thought I got the best end of the deal, thinking, you know, that the safest place for me in this cell was probably going to be up high. So I got up in this top bunk. Little did I know, when the door closed and locked, they have a light in the cell which stays on all night.
Oh, true.
Because in case someone tries to do something they shouldn't, you know. Which probably worked out quite well for me, because I wanted to know where this other guy was. But I did not get a wink of sleep that night. Mind you, I was only in there for sort of 3 to 4 hours, and I was on the plane back home to New Zealand.
Oh, you came back? You did get sent back.
Yeah, so the joke is I went all the way to the UK for a soggy chicken salad sandwich and then home again. So.
Oh, your sister made the right call.
Yeah, and she had a great time, and funnily enough, she's still living over there full time now.
True.
So it was a good move by her to stay on.
So that's why you came back. You were forced back.
I was forced back, and the unfortunate thing with that, Jimmy, was I'd actually met my now wife Vicky over there. She's a Yorkshire girl, so she thought I was coming back. The rugby club thought I was coming back, so I really felt as though I'd let a lot of people down by this, and. She ended up staying on a little bit longer, but then she just obviously clearly couldn't live without me, you know. Yeah. So she was...
Mate, what a love story that is.
She was on a plane back to New Zealand, and, you know, I knew I really had to turn it on when she got back to New Zealand. So I had planned this, like, nationwide road trip. You know, I took her far north. I took her swimming with the dolphins in Kaikoura, and she's like, "This is awesome." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is just a typical weekend. This is what we get up to in New Zealand." So, yeah, it's fair to say I won her over there. And we've now got 3 little kids living in Owakura, just south of New Plymouth, and we're living our best life, mate.
Mate, it's like a movie. So, how long were you together before you had to?
That's a real good question. Probably I wouldn't know exactly when the romance started, so don't ask me how long we've been together or married or anything like that and put me on the spot. But it was fairly soon after getting to York, and that was probably the reason why I ended up extending my stay. I mean, don't get me wrong, the rugby and the lads were great, but there was a little bit of an extra incentive there as well.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff. That's a good yarn. And you mentioned you started playing footy when you were 4 or 5?
Yeah.
But then you also, I hear, that you had a pretty bad accident when you were 5. So how did that set back your rugby career?
I did, and mate, to be honest with you, now that you say that, that's probably the reason why I didn't become a man in black.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when I was 4 years old, my dad was in the farm ute and actually ran me over. And I know that probably sounds pretty full on.
Yeah, it does.
It's not like he lined me up from 10 metres out and had a crack at me. Got him, that'll teach him to get out of the way. It was just a bizarre set of circumstances. Dad was in the cab of the ute talking with our farm staff next to him, and I was on the back of the tray, reached around and said, "Dad, I'm getting off." But he was in full conversation mode. He didn't hear.
Yeah.
And I climbed down off the back of the ute, down onto the tow ball, and then as soon as my foot hit the ground, he started backing up. And he's I mean, it wasn't high speed or anything, but he slowly backed over me, and he tells me he remembers feeling the bump, and he thought it was just a bit of wood or something like that. And as he backed up and then looked back in the direction that he'd come from and realised that I was lying there on the ground, he said he was out of the ute that quickly, that the ute was still rolling backwards as he was running towards me.
Jeez.
And like, it really shook him up, It really shook him up, and as it would, you know. And I'm even sort of visualising now if I was in that position and it was my boy Jack, you know. So as it turned out, I got rushed into our farmhouse, and thankfully one of my aunties was there who's a nurse, and she sort of cut all my overalls off me and all the rest of it, and just said, "Look, he needs to get help straight away." So the closest help that we had was the vet group, the vet clinic in the Parterre. So mum and dad rushed me in there.
Took you to the vet?
Sorry, not the vet, the local doctor.
I was going to say.
And but the vet part comes. Took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, yeah, just give him a bit of paracetamol and put him to bed. He just needs a bit of rest. And so mum and dad didn't really know.
Yeah.
They brought me home.
What sort of pain were you in at the time?
Oh, look, I was 4. I don't really remember, mate. Yeah. And, you know, I'm as hard as nails. So I'd imagine it would have been pretty bad. But,
where did the car actually run over you?
So over my leg and over my collarbone.
And was it both wheels, like front and back?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
True.
So it was decent. But anyway, the reason why I say about the vet is because you know, I get back home and my auntie, who's the nurse, is just like, oh my god, I wouldn't. This is serious, you know. Like I wouldn't even send this person to, like, I wouldn't even treat my dog like this. This is what I was sort of getting at. And so anyway, I'm in the car down to Wanganui, which is the closest hospital at that stage. As it turned out, broken leg, collarbone, all the rest of it. But the bit I like to play up with Dad is every now and then, you know, I'll be down at the farm and I'll walk past them and just sort of put a bit of a limp on. And he'll ask me, hey, what's up with you? And I was like, just that injury's coming back to play me again, eh?
You remember when you ran me over?
Yeah, I just like to rub it in a little bit, eh? So, but that was, it's probably the only reason why I didn't make it as an All Black. Yeah.
Did that actually cost you like years when you were playing? Were you?
Nah, not at all, mate. Yeah. I'm 4 years old, and my ambitions of being an All Black by that stage weren't really top of the priority list. But look, I was that young. I don't really remember, and you know, it's just part of being a kid. You know, kids break arms and legs and stuff all the time. But I was bloody lucky, mate. I was bloody lucky because if the wheel had gone over another part of the body, it could have been a different situation. Yeah. So yeah.
And hasn't stopped you getting through 10k a game.
Hasn't stopped me through getting 10k a game. You're right. Yeah.
But my first memory of you was when you refereed. Must have been one of your earlier games. It was a Taranaki Auckland pre-season game in Taranaki, and I think it was my first game as captain. It was one of your first games as a referee, and I always remember just your mannerisms on the field. I felt like from that moment that I knew you were going to be a very good ref and go through the ranks pretty quickly. And I think I even remember saying it in my first ever captain's after-match speech. But that is my first memory of you as a person and as a referee.
Oh, wow. That's
You don't remember it?
No, I don't.
Thought I changed your life and inspired you.
Well, it would have been nice to hear that, mate. But, it's actually really, really interesting that you say that because, and you said it before, like the speed at which I progressed through the system was a lot quicker than the normal pathway, you know. So I really battled for a long time with imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's not uncommon amongst, you know, sports people that have been accelerated.
Everyone, pretty much.
Yeah. I battled for quite some time to actually accept that, you know, I was good enough to be there. You know, and me being the kind of guy I am, I'm a massive introvert, like, so the spotlight is actually something that is not comfortable for me.
True.
Yeah, it may strike you as surprising, definitely, like given the job that I do.
Yeah.
But I remember doing some studies in positive psychology, and I had to do a personality sort of survey. And one of the things that fell out of it was the fact that, you know, one of my weaknesses was the spotlight. And I remember doing a sort of a review of my personality survey with one of the coaches. And I said, riddle me this, like, I'm an international referee. I'm in the spotlight week in, week out. Yet spotlight is one of my weaknesses. Help me out understanding that. And she's like, well, okay, we'll look at your strengths. What one of your strengths actually line up? Or maybe put a shadow over top of that fear of, or not want to say fear, but weakness of spotlight. And it took me straight to belief. Like, as time went on, I had a real strong belief in my ability to be a referee. Sometimes it's too strong. You know, the fact that I can run out there and go, physically, I know I can do this. Mentally, I know I can do this. You know, I put a lot of time into other areas of the game around the tackle, the breakdown, the law, all that sort of stuff. So it's all that preparation piece, you know. Like when you know that you've done absolutely everything that you can do, you have confidence to run out there and do a good job. I mean, you need to accept the fact that, yep, you will make mistakes, that we're human. But I mean, if you're running out there with any element of doubt, then you're just setting yourself up for failure, you know. So yeah, that it really took me some time in those first sort of 2 or 3 years as a pro referee to actually accept that, you know what, I am good enough to be here, you know. Yeah.
And did you feel like you're playing, not that you played at professional level, but semi-pro level, helped you progress through the referee ranks quicker? I feel like you had that natural feel for the game, you understood it from a player's perspective.
I absolutely think it was an advantage, and I mean you can see that quite clearly in the guys that have played at a professional level that are now referees. You know, the Nick Berry's a classic example. Like, while in the early stages of his career, like, his law understanding may not have been quite there, he had an amazing feel for the game, and still does have an amazing feel for the game. And now, because of the time that he spent in the game and the work that he's put in behind the scenes around his law and all the rest of it, he's an outstanding referee all round. So absolutely, I think that would have helped. But the big thing probably is the relationships piece. You know, like the relationships with players on the field is really important. You know, accepting, putting your hand up and being able to accept that you have made a mistake is really important as well, which isn't always easy, especially when you come in as a new referee. You want to show everyone that you're good enough. You know, you've got this fear of like imposter syndrome sitting over the top of you. You make a mistake. Oh, I don't want to tell anyone I made a mistake. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess I can only speak on behalf of myself here, but it really feels as though the journey's gone full circle. You know, I started off as a young referee, not really knowing too much, very naive, but just loving the game and, you know, making decisions that felt right for me. Then after a bit of time, you sort of get drawn into this refereeing sort of silo, and you start seeing things through like a referee perspective, and maybe you lose a bit of that game understanding and game sense, game awareness, and then you sort of come back around again and you start making decisions that feel right for you, you know. You know, you have all that understanding of the law, you have the understanding of the game, you have the sort of bigger sort of worldly view of rugby, and you know, you're quite happy to put your hand up and go, yeah, I just made a mistake there. Or so that's definitely the place that I feel that I'm in at the moment. Like, it's weird, mate, because the love I have for refereeing now is the same love that I felt when I very first started that under 12s game. I was like, this is awesome. I love doing this, you know. And to compare like a frosty morning start under 12s to the biggest stage in the world, which is a World Cup, or, you know, running out on Twickenham in front of 90,000+, having that same feeling of love and enjoyment and passion for the game. I really feel as though I've gone full circle on this.
Mate, how good is that? And you mentioned you don't really naturally like the spotlight. Talk to me about your Instagram account, the new Paul Williams diary. I'm fascinated by this. I've seen it. I feel like it probably took you a bit of time to build up the courage to set this up, but I think it's a good thing.
I guess like this is something that's probably been brewing for the last 3 to 4 years, you know, like, and as I said before, you know, our time that we've got in this environment is limited. So, you know, how do we really make the most of it? How do we really like squeeze the good juice out of it? So, you know, again, the spotlight thing is not something that I'm totally comfortable with. So setting this up was terrifying for me, terrifying.
3 years to set up an Instagram.
You know, even doing like a simple post where you're talking to your phone to then post something that could be seen by anyone, you know, is really terrifying. But I mean, there's a part of me that has a lot of peace with that, because if I know it's terrifying, it's taking me outside my comfort zone. And if I'm outside my comfort zone, you know, that's where the growth happens. So, strange way of doing it, but anyway, that's what I'm doing. And, you know, I've set it up as, you know, Paul Williams Referee Diary 2023, particularly around, you know, this is a pretty big year for referees. I thought it'd be cool to give people a bit of an insight of the referee's world, and actually, you know, kind of show the world that, you know, we're human. It's not just the 80 minutes that you see of a referee on the field. How we deal with, you know, success, how we deal with failure, if you want to call it failure. You know, so there was definitely that sort of mindset around it. But the other part of it, which has probably become a lot more prevalent now, was the whole sort of, I guess, idea of, you know, we get a lot of negative criticism. And I'm not saying it's just us. Players get it, coaches get it, you get it, mate. So it's something that is probably always going to be there. But when I set up my own personal Instagram page yonks ago, you know, I was sharing my stuff with my family. I was sharing stuff that I do in my spare time, and then all of a sudden I was getting, you know, requests from people all over the world to sort of follow me. And you know, it started off with, you know, people that I'd met sort of in different parts of the world and maybe shared a beer with or whatever it may be. And then it started being people asking to follow me that I'd never met before. But I could see they had sort of some interest in rugby, so I thought, you know, maybe they're legit. And then it really dawned on me when I did a post on my personal Instagram page of my daughter when she was really young. She was running around a hotel room nude because we were celebrating the fact that she'd just peed in the potty for the first time, you know, like it was a massive highlight in our world. And then a good friend of mine, Lauren Cornane, she said to me, like, are you sure you should have posted that? And like, I love Laura. She's a great woman, and she's been almost like a mother to us in the rugby referee space. And I sort of thought about it, and I was like, you know, anyone that follows me now can see that post. So the reason why, the other reason why I set up this page was my referee diary page was to make a real clear separation between my professional rugby life and my personal life, because, you know, more recently, and it's been very well publicised, you know, Wayne Barnes had a game where he copped a lot of criticism, which wouldn't be foreign to him. Like we've sort of become accustomed to that now.
He's still copping it for that forward pass 20 years ago.
He is still copping it, and I definitely drop it in conversation when I bump into him from time to time. But you know, then when his wife Polly started getting targeted as well, you know, that's where we need to draw the line. You know, it's our decision that we do what we do in terms of refereeing. It's not their decision, so they shouldn't be the ones copying this abuse. So I was really proud of Barnesy for actually really voicing his concern and frustration and disappointment and all the rest of it, because with the profile he's got, it made traction, you know. And now all of a sudden, when we're getting this trolling coming through, they're actually being the ones put in the spotlight, and a spotlight put on them going, this is not right, you know, versus them putting the spotlight on us. So, yeah, 3 years, there was method to the madness, but and even now, mate, I'll still freely admit, like, I'm a little bit reluctant about posting stuff, but you know, the feedback that I've had from people that follow it has actually been really positive, so that's given me a little bit of confidence to keep it going.
Where do you see it going forward? Do you see it like post-game? Would you ever review yourself, or let's say you had to make a big decision in a game, let's say the Grubbiest tackle, which you had to do, I think last year. Would you use that platform as a place to give your opinion or your thoughts or how you felt it went, or is that sort of a bit of a no-no for a referee still?
I think there's definitely boundary lines that need to be upheld. You know, I'm employed by New Zealand Rugby, so I've got to be careful in terms of, you know, what I broadcast there. I'm also involved with World Rugby, so again, I've got boundary lines there. So, and also too to the game, like I've got to respect the game. But I guess there's an opportunity there. Again, this is this human side coming out, that when we have a game that may not necessarily go that well, I think I want to be brave enough and to say, you know, how I'm feeling about that game, good or bad, you know, and I think that will really give people a a really good perspective on, you know, they're more than just this robot that runs around in the middle for 80 minutes. There's more to Paul Williams than just what you see in those 80 minutes. So hopefully, you know, it might have an impact on one or two people, and if it does, and if it's a positive impact, then great. I feel as though I've made a contribution, and again, it lines up with one of my values. So, yeah, there's. I do think it's a vehicle to help people understand, you know, the wider picture of a referee.
And I guess the risk of setting it up for you is, I guess, this opportunity for people to come at you post a bad game.
But you know, yeah, you did right, and I gave that a lot of thought when I set it up. But you know, the comments come anyway, whether it comes through a social platform like that, or, you know, people find the time to track me down on Facebook and send it through Messenger or whatever. The comments come regardless. So you know, maybe it's an opportunity for those that do follow the page to actually see, wow, they get these sorts of comments, you know. So look, it hasn't come yet.
The bad comments. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
because you've been on fire, mate.
Well, and again, you know, this is the other thing about that, maybe that slight apprehension about projecting yourself out to the world too much, you know. You know, and even with the 20 or 30 followers I've got, I'm not too sure what it is, you know. It's not exactly like I've got a Wayne Barnes profile or anything like that, but I do see it as an opportunity to, you know, portray referees in a positive light.
Yeah, definitely. Because you guys do cop it so much. I mean, way more than players, way more than coaches. You mentioned before, but I do feel like the referee is on the end of it more often than not.
Yeah, but I've got a great coach at home, and my wife, like, she just gives it to me, so I'm used to it. The stuff in the 80 minutes and afterwards, that's nothing. No, I guess. Yeah, we do, mate. There's no two ways about it. We do cop it. But again, sort of, I go back to what I said right at the start. If you have a real good understanding of yourself and who you are, all that external stuff, you know, it fades away.
Yeah.
Like, it may sting for a little bit. Someone may make a harsh comment. It'll sting, but just as long as it doesn't sink in, you know. And that's really important in terms of, you know, looking after yourself. And you would have heard the analogy before, you know. Put your own like oxygen mask on first. Do what you need to do to look after yourself, and it'll put you in a real good place to be able to deal with all that crap, you know. Yeah,
I think back to was it the South Africa game? It must have been like 1 or 2 years ago. I don't really remember the game. I just remember the criticism you received after that game. How hard was that for you? You had Junos.
Mate, there's been a few of them. You better narrow this down.
Has it actually
Oh, look, it's different.
What's been the worst game? Like, what's been the worst post game for you, where you really felt like, oh man, this is rough?
Well, again, it kind of relates to age and stage. I remember having a game.
Age and stage, I like that.
Yeah. So being a younger referee, early on in my career, I had a game over in Canberra. And as you know, going to Canberra for a super game, it feels like you're in another part of the world. And it was a bloody cold night. I can't remember exactly who the Brumbies were playing. It's probably best I don't say who it was, so it'll probably narrow it down. But after the game, I copped a lot of criticism. From fans, social media? From fans, the works. You know, and at that time, and again, my age and stage, I felt like my whole world was imploding. And, you know, this whole imposter syndrome, that was just revving up at full noise, you know. The voices in my head were saying, you don't belong here, you're not good enough, get out of here. And I remember one particular comment that was made, and I won't repeat it because not only was it directed at me, but it was directed at the family, and it was around death. But yeah, that really shook me up. But again, because of the age and stage, I didn't want to share that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell even my colleagues. I didn't want to show them, oh, look at this guy who said this, because of all those noises in my head saying, you're not good enough. What are you doing here? So as time moved on, I guess fast forward to where I am now, when I cop that sort of criticism, I'm like finding that my first mate go, hey, look, check this out. Look what he sent me, you know, and having a laugh.
Yeah.
Not only having a laugh, like I'm also looking at it going, gee, the person who's taken the time to track me down through social media or whatever and write that, God, I feel sorry for that person, eh? They must not have a lot of good going on in their life for them to take the time to do that, you know? So it's a weird thing to say, but I'm actually more concerned about the person who's sending that than me on the receiving end.
Yeah.
So I think to fast forward and get into that place, it's a far better place to be, you know.
Well, more often than not, it's probably someone who's had a massive punt more than they needed to, and your referee decision has probably cost them.
That's right. Well, I'm not a punter. I hadn't thought about that, but you did right. But so that was early on, but probably more recently there was you know, that Corabetti tackle in the Aussie South Africa game. You know, that was a really great occasion right up until that point, you know. Refereeing on the Adelaide Oval. Like, wow, you know, I can say I've refereed a game on Adelaide Oval. But anyway, it was, Corabetti made a tackle against one of the South Africans, and long story short, you know, it was a really split decision in terms of what the right outcome was, and without going into the detail, it pretty much split two hemispheres, you know, like one hemisphere was saying, you know, it should be this, and the other hemisphere is saying that, and I remember being caught in the middle of it, and I was just like, you know, this is not really what I signed up for, you know.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, I'm like, this is all part of it, and like we were saying before, like when it comes down to those crunch games and the big controversy and all the rest of it, like, what a place to be! Yeah, what a place to be! And again, like I've said before, that what it builds in you as a human and being able to control yourself in that moment and deal with the aftermath, and you know, you need to be, I guess it's really, refereeing has really helped me grow up as a man. Probably not vertically up, but still waiting for that growth spurt. But you know, just in terms of who I am, what I'm about, what's important, what my priorities are, you know, what my values are.
Yeah.
You know, so now when sort of big stuff happens in the game, like you take it for what it is, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't like make you a bad referee. Doesn't make you a bad person. And I think too, like again, age and stage. I've got a wife and young family. Like I go home and Vicky doesn't even really know where I've come from sometimes. And she's like, "Where were you refereeing this weekend?" And you know, the kids want to play, and like Jack wants to get into some Lego, and Frankie wants me to put some makeup on or a dress on or whatever it may be. You know, it's just perspective, right?
It is,
like rugby's great, but gee, it's just rugby. You know, like yes, it's a great game, and we get so wrapped up in it and all the rest of it. But sometimes we just need to take a breath, take a step back, and go, you know, there's more to life. Yeah. Some people may not agree with that, but it's certainly how I view it at the moment, and it certainly helps me move on from those big moments.
Yeah,
you know?
mate, it's so true, and such a good mindset that you have and you take into it. I am intrigued, and you spoke about like the death threats.
Yeah.
I am intrigued to go into that a little bit more, and like, have you ever felt really vulnerable or like physically or with messages? Have you ever felt like your safety was under threat being a referee?
There have been times coming off a game when you're walking down through the tunnel.
Yeah.
And that's about as raw and real as it gets.
Yeah.
You know, you get the trolls that hide behind a screen and a keyboard that send you stuff. That stuff still stings. But when you've got people leaning over hoardings, spitting, spraying at you, like that is pretty intense. So, yeah, like, I can't narrow it down, like, and I think the game has moved on quite some way from that sort of behaviour. You know, maybe I've just got lucky, and you know, the games have gone well, and you know, I haven't copped that. But the other tactic that I've got as well, mate, is you just wait out on the field for an extra sort of 5 or 10 minutes.
Talk to the players till they all simmer down.
Just let the heat die down a little bit. But no, I don't think I've physically felt unsafe.
Yeah,
like we get pretty well looked after, you know, on the ground by the security and all the rest of it. But
have you ever done the run off? Sometimes you see the ref just sprint to that tunnel.
No, I haven't done the run off, and it's usually because I've got no energy left in the legs by that stage. But it's a real interesting one, mate. And again, it's what the pressure of the environment does, you know. And again, I come back to that fact that if you don't have yourself in check, if you're not able to manage yourself in those moments, then what hope do you have of making good decisions in those moments, you know? So yeah, I'm really, really privileged and blessed to have been exposed to some great people during my career, particularly Ted Philbridge, who's down here in Christchurch, who I have a lot of time and respect for, and you know, he's done a lot of work with New Zealand Rugby referees, and you know what he's done for me, not only as a referee but as a man. I'm forever in his debt, you know. And I still have a very, very close relationship with him, and he's kind of like my sounding board, you know. He's my warrant of fitness check. I've also got a fantastic mental skills coach in the form of Jace McKenzie, you know. Again, a really well-respected sports psych. So New Zealand Rugby's brilliant in terms of putting that support around us that we need, and giving us the skills that we need to be able to deal with these moments, you know. Because, you know, had I not had that exposure, I may not be sitting here now. I may not have made it this far, you know. So, no, I'm very, very lucky. But, you know, I think, and particularly what those guys have taught me, when I first started out and these guys were coming on, I'm like, great, this is going to be awesome for my refereeing, you know, they're going to make me a better referee. Well, actually, the better referee part, that was just a byproduct of actually becoming a better human, you know. That was their main focus. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I just wanted to be a better referee, you know, age and stage, starting out in the career. But you know, what they've taught me and what they've instilled in me, you know, has definitely made me a better human, a better father, a better husband, a better mate, you know. So yeah, I'm forever in their debt.
And what are your plans as a referee going forward? You've obviously got the Rugby World Cup this year to look forward to. You're confirmed into that?
No. Those selections are made in May. So
May, okay.
Yep. So we'll be nervously waiting for a phone call, whether it be a good one or not.
How many do they take?
We'll take 12 referees,
12.
Plus a group of ARs and TMOs as well. So, you know, look, going to the World Cup in 2011 was a real highlight for me, and that again it felt in 2019 the World Cup in Japan, I got selected to go there and referee, which was actually quite a when I was announced to go, it was quite a tough time, because Glenn Jackson was what I felt our number one referee in New Zealand at the time. And you know, it was for us as certainly a New Zealand group, and probably the World Rugby referees as well, it was a sure thing that Jacko would be going. And because I was sort of still starting out in my career and still quite young and naive and vulnerable, you know, my ambition was just to get there and go and hold a flag, you know, and go and carry Jacko's bags. You know, I've learned a hell of a lot from the guy, both on and off the field, probably primarily off the field, to be honest. But, you know, when he missed out going there and I went as a referee, I struggled with that. I did struggle with that for a while, because I knew what the perception may be, that, you know, how on earth has Paul Williams gone and Glenn Jackson missed out? And that didn't sit very comfortable with me for quite some time. But, I mean, and I'm saying this now, it certainly wasn't a case of me being better than him, because I certainly wasn't. He was definitely our number one referee, certainly I felt at the time. But, you know, they try and bring some younger stock into the World Cup refereeing ranks, having some experienced guys there, because, you know, when those experienced guys move on, we can't all of a sudden then just have a whole new crop of new guys coming into a World Cup. So there was certainly a bit of a political agenda behind it. But still, it didn't sit well with me. I even remember ringing Dad and telling him, and he was shocked to know that Jacko wasn't going. He's like, "What? So they picked you over Jacko?" It's like, yeah, thanks, Dad.
That's when you know.
That's when you know. If you want the truth, you go and get it from the old man. But yeah, that was pretty tough. But like I say, like selections for this World Cup in France will be made in May. And yeah, absolutely, I'd love to be there, but I'm also aware that I'm amongst some great referees here in New Zealand, some great referees worldwide. I am aware that sometimes you can be refereeing the absolute house down, and it doesn't work out for you. And Jacko's a classic example of that. But I mean, like I said before, I'm really at a place now where I'm just loving my rugby. If I do go, then fantastic, awesome. I can't wait to be amongst the biggest spectacle in the rugby world. But equally, if I'm not there, it'll hurt. I'll be disappointed, no doubt, because I've been working bloody hard for it. But I'll be accepting of the fact as well. So yeah. But I hope it's the latter.
Surely it's the latter. The form you're in, mate. You're the first picked. Maybe behind Barnesy. Would you say Barnesy's the best referee in the world?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, and it's not just for his, his technical ability on the field. He's been doing it for such a long time now. His game understanding, his game awareness. Like I said before, relationships.
Yeah.
Like that guy is just phenomenal in terms of building rapport with people.
Yeah.
But it's also the work that he does away from the 80 minutes on the field, what he does for our group, our World Rugby Referees group, and the way he sort of leads us is, I guess you kind of call him the kaimātua of the World Rugby Referees group. So I have a hang of a lot of respect for him, and I really hope that the World Cup sort of goes his way, because he really deserves to get that pinnacle game,
The final.
I'd love to see him do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Mate. Well, that was one of the questions. We have had about 1,000 questions come in for your referee. Referees always seem to get plenty of questions coming. We'll race through a few of these. You've answered a lot of them, to be fair. This one, who is the worst / grubbiest player to referee?
James Marshall. Next. No, I've been pretty lucky. I haven't had too many guys that have sort of rubbed me up the wrong way too much. But, there's some hellishly strong competitors out there, Like, you don't need to go too far past the likes of TJ.
Yeah.
He's constantly got you under the pump. So... again, mate, the game that we play, we don't get the grubs anymore. You usually get that when you go back to club rugby land.
Yeah.
So no, I've been pretty fortunate, mate. I haven't really had too many, or none that spring to mind anyway.
Other than TJ, I knew it was going to be.
No, he's fine, mate. He's going good.
Okay. Are there any refs in the other sports that you admire? Do you watch many refs in other codes, or?
To be honest with you, I don't, there's that much women rugby on at the moment, and there's not a lot of spare time in the day, and when I do have that spare time, it's usually wrapped up around kids and what's going on in their world. Like our TV, we moved it in our lounge about 4 or 5 months ago, just to sort of reposition it. We actually haven't plugged it back in yet.
True.
Yeah. So I'm working during the day. And, I really want to prioritise that time I have in the morning and the evening for the kids,
That's it,
so it's...
And you're living in Paradise, where you can just jump out across the road, go for a surf on the beach.
That's the one. I'd love to say I surf, but no, I'm not a surfer. I'm not a fisherman. I'm not a mountain climber, which is actually quite bloody poor, really, when you think about it.
Sandcastles, mate.
They're sandcastles. That's all I'm into at the moment.
But when you're watching a game of sport, you're watching the players, you're not watching the referee, you're not that.
Someone asked me this yesterday, actually, like who do I watch? And I think it's a combination of both now. Naturally you're watching what the referee's doing, because it's part of my job and who I am. But I'm still that guy who loves the game, loves sitting back on the couch and just appreciating two teams that play phenomenal footy, you know. I think the other thing is as well, like now that I'm a referee, I don't have, now obviously I'm with the Crusaders, but before then I hadn't had an alliance with any team, so I wasn't supporting that team or that team. So, but funny story on that. Obviously, now that I'm involved, with the Crusaders, and what a privilege that is to be able to come down here in the environment, learn from some fantastic coaches, talk to the players. It's really helping grow my game, and I really hope that I'm able to sort of contribute back as well. No, I remember, where was it? I was watching a game, and oh no, my mind's gone. I can't remember what I was going to say there. No. Union, no.
Yeah,
no.
Different sport.
No. No, forget it. Oh, that's right. I'm back.
He's back.
I'm back. I just refereed a game in Hamilton. This was earlier this season, and it was the Crusaders Blues game. This is it. It's coming back now.
Yeah.
Crusaders Blues game. We were in the Helm, I think it is, the Helm in Hamilton. A bar in the middle of town there. And I had the guys that I was refereeing with on the Chiefs game, and we finished up and we came back to the Helm for a meal and a couple of quiets. And the Crusaders Blues game was on the TV, and Brendan Pickerel, my colleague who is with the Blues, like it's his franchise team. I put a small wager on it with him, and I'll get to the wager in a minute. But
sounds big.
Now all of a sudden there was something on it. It was his team against my team. So here I was in the middle of Hamilton in this bar. We know the game was slimming down to the wire, and I was just up going, come on, boys, come on. So all of a sudden, like, I've got these eyes looking at me going, who is this Muppet from Christchurch? No.
They didn't know he was a referee. They're wondering,
well,
why is he supporting the Crusaders?
Yeah, that probably was a little bit strange, but... the great thing about it is, like, I have no involvement with the Crusaders on a game day, and that's super, super important for everyone to understand. But now it's a chance for me to actually help give back to, I don't want to say give back, it's not that big a deal, but, I get to make a contribution within a team. And as a byproduct of that, I get to absorb all this great information, resources from the likes of yourselves, the players. They're asking fantastic questions about the game, which has now got me thinking. Yeah. So it's just expanding me and growing me as a referee. So it's a really, really good relationship and a great initiative that was set up by Chris Pollock and the high performance unit at New Zealand Rugby. So there's only been positives to come out of it. But anyway, the wager was, I said to Brendan Pickerel, look, if your boys win, then I'll go and buy a Blues cap, and I'll wear it on our review call, our Zoom call. So this is the call that all the referees sit on, and management and all the rest of it. I'll wear a Blues cap. And but if I win, if the Crusaders win, you've got to do the same. And I said, you up for it? And he's like, yep, I'm up for it. Hence why there was so much drama and excitement. I was getting up and fist pumping, more so knowing the fact that he was going to have to sit there with a Blues cap on. So I had so much pleasure in jumping on that Zoom call on Tuesday morning to see him sitting there. He didn't buy a Blues cap, but
Crusaders, wasn't it?
Crusaders. He didn't buy a Crusaders cap. He said he couldn't find one anywhere in Auckland.
Oh, you're kidding.
Which I think is an absolute cop-out.
Yeah.
But what he did do was he changed his background to the Crusaders logo.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, I'll give you that. You've made half an effort there. So I'm looking forward to the rematch a bit later.
But the Crusaders made no money from him. At least they needed to get their $40 hat.
You're right. Yeah, no, I'll hold on to that.
Okay, next one. What happened to Chris Gaffney's jet ski?
Oh, Chris
here's a
Gaffney's
referee.
Jet ski.
Umpire.
He's an umpire, cricket umpire, our best in New Zealand. So we had a Super Rugby camp, the New Zealand guys, pre-Super Rugby this year down in Queenstown. And we did a bit of tiki touring around the place, and we ended up doing a bit of team building stuff in Wanaka. It was then followed up by a presentation done by Tony Brownie, and Chris Gaffney. So they just sort of opened up about their world as an umpire in cricket and a coach in rugby. And afterwards we wrapped up and we were in the local rugby club, and we had a couple of quiets, and they said, oh, why don't you guys come down to the lake? We've got a couple of jet skis. You can come down and have a hoon. And naturally we were like, yes, please. We'll be all over that. Yeah. So down we go, and the few of the boys shoot out on the jet ski, and they've had a bit of a... Beforehand, they've had a little bit of a what to do and what not to do and all the rest of it. Anyway, I went down a little bit later and had a go and hooned off and came back into the shore, and I didn't get the instructions. And I've never driven a jet ski before. So I'm just kind of winging it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, I'll just gently come into the shore, and it's stones, you know, in the lake. It's not sand. So I'll just gently cruise into the shore here, and I'm sure those that have used a jet ski and know about jet skis know where the story's about to go. But Brownie's standing sort of about ankle deep on the shore, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm just slowly cruising in, and he just says, "Kill it." And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to kill it.
Yeah.
He's like, "Kill it now." I'm like, I don't know how. And then as I'm getting closer, I can hear the stones starting to get sucked up through the motor, and he can hear it as well. And he just goes, "Kill it!" So I rip this cord off the thing, the engine shuts down, and he looks at me and he's just shaking his head. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And he came over and had a look, and I said to him, "Is it bad?" And he didn't say a word, he just looked at me and nodded, and I was like, oh God. And then he kept walking around and he said, "It's okay." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It's Gaffney's one, it's not my jet ski." So there's a bit of a running joke now. I'm the guy who bloody ruined Chris Gaffney's jet ski. So
brutal.
It is brutal, but I learned a harsh lesson that day. But there was no hiding. I just had to put my hand up and acknowledge the cock up. So there we go.
And that's one thing you do well.
Yeah. Well,
age and stage.
Yeah, age and stage. You did right. Yeah.
Okay, next one. What's the most embarrassing moment of your refereeing career to date?
Look, there's probably been little moments on the field where you kind of go, "Oh, that's embarrassing," but I don't think I've had too many like broadcast like howlers, you know, or broadcast sort of mess ups where I'm really embarrassed. But you know, we get bumped over from players from time to time. Like even the Fiji enduro against the Highlanders down in Dunedin a few weeks back, I got cleaned up 2 or 3 times, you know. Thankfully, I bounced pretty quickly and I was back up on my feet and away we went. But as I'm thinking now, I vividly remember, and again, early on in my career, very naive, there was a pre-season game, North Harbour might have been playing Auckland at one of the club grounds up there. So it was very low-key, but James Parsons was the hooker.
Yeah.
And like, obviously we know who James Parsons is, and I knew who James Parsons was. But putting down the scrum, no, it was before the game. I was chatting to him and I said, "G'day Sam, g'day Sam." Yeah, and he just sort of looks at me. And then out on the field, I was like, "Sam, can you just do that?" And he's like, "Okay." He's looking at me strangely again. And I must have, I've done this like 3 or 4 times now. And I called him Sam one more time. And he just looked at me and goes, "It's James." And I was like, oh my God. So I played rugby, a lot of club rugby, with a guy called Sam Parsons.
Oh, yeah.
So it was locked in my head, Sam Parsons. So I'll be calling James Parsons Sam for like the last 40 minutes of this game. And he's just looking at me going, what a muppet. And then when he said to me, "Mate, it's James," I was just like, oh, you dork. So thankfully, pre-season, not too much heat on, not too many people knew, but I was so embarrassed in that moment. You know,
is that why referees usually use numbers instead of...
Yeah. When we forget names, we just either go captain or number. And some of the names are actually pretty tricky these days. So, we've got to be careful there.
You do indeed. Okay, next one. Did Elliot Dixon ground the ball in the 2015 final? Yours, please.
Hey, you know, we're all about awarding tries, eh?
Yeah.
We love to see a try. Get in there, blow the whistle, get out of there.
You're giving it.
And if we've completely got it wrong, then hopefully the TMO can save us. Hey, look, give it a try. Yeah. Why not?
Fair enough, mate. Award it.
Yeah.
Okay, how many press-ups can you do?
What, right now?
Oh, not now, but...
No.
Let's pretend you were about to do them right now. You're about to go for a PB.
There was a time, not too many seasons ago, where we were doing this as a group of referees, just
press ups
stupidly before a game. which is not that great.
What, like a max press up?
Yeah,
Comp?
just
What,
go
all the
go,
TMO and touchies and you just
go to fail. I think it might have been myself, James Dolman, O'Keefe. Maybe the TMO opted out of that gym session, but I think we got up around sort of the 50s or 60s, before we fell apart.
Stuff, eh?
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. Probably not the same now.
Pound for pound, must be one of the strongest. Okay, next one. Thoughts on the lower tackle height rule? This is an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. I totally understand where the game's going around, player safety and that being paramount. It always is the case. I do think that we need to apply a little bit of common sense though as well. I was chatting with a group of my local referees, and we were kind of just discussing, how are we going to adjudicate this, in particularly club rugby land, and we spoke about the kind of tackles where guys are running off the line. It's high speed, it's high impact. When those guys are tackling high, like, that's a no-no. Like, they've got time and space to be able to make a better decision there. I think we need to apply a little bit of common sense, as where the impact's lower, the level of danger is lower, and yes, while the tackle might be high, like let's say someone's at the base of a ruck, they pick and go, they're naturally going to be ducking low anyway, So it then becomes extremely difficult for a defender to go even lower.
Riccatelli springs to mind.
He does spring to mind. Lead with the head. So in those moments, we need to be good enough to apply some common sense. And like we said earlier around, having that game understanding, that's really, really important, because if we just go black and white, anything that's above nipple line or whatever it is, as a penalty or whatever, I think we're actually doing a disservice to the game. And we have a responsibility. Like, our time as referees in the middle, we become ambassadors for the game. Like, we've got a real sense of duty to and care to look after the game in whole. So it's important that we are making decisions that people understand, and primarily the players understand. That's probably what I'd say around that at the moment.
Fair enough. I like that answer. It's a good one. Okay, two more. As a known Happy Gilmore lover, why haven't you incorporated more of his quotes into your refereeing?
I think I know where that question has come from too.
Who?
I think it might be Brad Weber.
Yeah, mate. Look-alike, actually, and similar.
Who? Him and I?
Yeah, what do you reckon? I was just thinking it then.
I don't know who should be more offended there, him or me. No.
The fact that you don't know shows you how similar you guys are.
No, I've got a heap of respect for Brad. He's a good man. He is an absolute legend. And I can't remember exactly word for word what the quote was that he said during the game, but now all of a sudden we've kind of started this little tradition that when we're in the same game together, someone will pull out a Happy Gilmore quote and hope that the other one picks up on it. But obviously you've got to be quite careful about that. If it's the dying stages of a game and it's all drawn up, he's not really interested in the Happy Gilmore quote, but I'm not too sure when I've got the Chiefs next, but I might need to work on a little bit more fodder for that. Yeah.
Well, I'll have the ref audio on for that game. I'll try and pick it up myself. That's good stuff. Okay, last question. Ask everyone this one. Best piece of advice you have for a Waterlad listener?
Best piece of advice for a Waterlad listener. I don't want to go too deep on this one, but
go as deep as you need.
Embrace every moment. And the reason why I say that is it doesn't just apply for us as referees or us as coaches or rugby players or sports people or whatever. It applies for everyone, because in terms of the stuff that we can control, the only thing we can control is what's happening right now. We can't control about what's happened. We can't control what's about to happen, what's coming up. All we can do is control right now in this present moment. Like the fact that you and I are sitting here right now, this is all we can control. Nothing else is in our control at the moment. So embrace the here and now is what I would say to your Waterlad listeners.
Mate, wow. That is impressive. I've definitely got you at the perfect age and stage to get you on this podcast because, man, this has been something special.
Thanks, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure being here.
Mate, really appreciate you giving up your time. You're a legend of the game. You're one of the best referees in the world. Really looking forward to following your journey from here. Obviously, it's been awesome having you part of the Crusaders and learning as much as I can off you. But, really looking forward to the end of the year, seeing you at the World Cup and refereeing some of the biggest games, following the Rugby Referee Diary 2023. And if you are listening to this, make sure you go give it a follow. There's plenty of good stuff on there. And mate, really appreciate you giving up your time and coming on the What a Lad podcast.
Thanks, mate. Absolute pleasure.
You're a lad.